Imina 37 na legislature in Guam is called to order. This is pursuant to a call to emergency session issued on July 30, 2023 for today, Monday, July 31, 2023 at 11 a.m. The letter was sent to all senators and is also posted on the drive. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Buenas and Hafaday, Speaker and colleagues, good morning. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to adopt today's legislative session agenda dated July 31st, 2023.
On the motion to adopt the session agenda, is there any objections? Hearing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, and notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative agenda items 2 through 6, which are the prayer, recognition of recipient of Imiladzen Mastakalu na Sacrificio, reciting of the Inafresi, singing of the Guam hymn in Chamorro, and singing of the national anthem.
On the motion to waive those items of the agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, we are now on roll call. Clerks, please take the roll call.
Senator Barnett, Senator Blas, Senator Brown, Senator Dueñas, Senator Fisher, Senator Lujan, Vice Speaker Muñoz Barnes, Senator Parkinson, Senator Perez, Senator Kanata, Senator San Augustine, Senator Siniclis, Senator Shelton, Senator Taitigui, Speaker Terlahi. Madam Speaker, there is a quorum.
Sedus Masi clerks, the clerks report there is a quorum. We will proceed with item 8 on the agenda. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to waive legislative session agenda items 8 through 12, call for approval of the legislative journal, communications and petitions, messages from Imagahagan Guahan, reports of standing committees, and reports of select committees.
On that motion to waive those items on the agenda, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move that bills introduced, bill numbers 152-37 LS through 155-37 LS and 156-37 COR, and resolutions introduced, resolution numbers 162-37 LS through 166-37 LS, be deemed to have been given their first reading.
On that motion regarding first reading and introduction of bills and resolutions, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're now under motions. Vice Speaker.
Madam Speaker, it's just a point of information.
Point of order?
No, point of information.
Point of information, please state it, Senator Taitigui.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just checked on the Google Drive, and none of the bills are located on it. So can we wait and pause until we can get these bills uploaded?
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to place the bills on the agenda, or at least one bill on the agenda, so then the clerks will transfer it to the correct drive at that point.
Thank you. Duly noted, Senator Titlegy. There has been a motion by Speaker Wampat to place the bills on the agenda.
No, I'm going to make that motion.
Yeah, you're going.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that you're making that motion. Madam Speaker, you are recognized on the motion for placement.
Thank you. And thank you, colleagues, for your assistance and cooperation this morning in this call to session. I would like to make a motion under motions right now to place Bill number 156-37 COR onto this emergency session agenda. This is a bill which is an act relative to expediting school inspections by authorizing variances, increasing small purchase limits, detailing of additional inspectors, and temporary employment of retired Government of Guam inspectors by amending 4722 of Division 1, Article 7 of Chapter 4 of Title 26 Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations.
As introduced by you.
This is introduced by Teresa M. Terlahi and Chris Barnett, and it was introduced on Friday last week, and Friday. And this bill makes one amendment to the rules and regarding variances, which according to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, he has assured me this will expedite variances because they will be able to review the variances before, during, and after inspections. And there will be without regard to when the inspections are.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There has been a motion to place 156-37 COR as introduced by Speaker Terlahi and Senator Chris Barnett. Are there any objections? Senator Bloss, I will recognize you. Do you have a point of order or an objection?
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Please state it.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Until we actually get formally the bill in itself, just in its introduction, Madam Chair, it appears to be in violation of our standing rules about basically one subject, one bill. You're talking about three different subjects.
There has a bill in the agenda. The motion is not debatable. I'm working on your point of order. Duly noted, Minority Leader. Is there an objection to this motion right now? Is there an objection?
Objection.
There is an objection. All those in favor of placing 156-37 COR onto the agenda, please signify by raising your hand. Motion carries. Senator Chosen Augustine, I will recognize you.
Madam Speaker, we're in motion, right? So we can add
Yes.
other bills?
Yes, you are. Yes, we are.
Okay, can we add Bill 91-37?
Can you please read its author and the title, please?
Alrighty, the author is myself, Senator Joe S. Augustine, co-sponsored by Senator Chris Barnett. An act to add and use Section 31-34 of Article 1, Chapter 3, Title 17, Guam Code, annotated relative to the temporary employment of Guam Department of Education retired facilities and maintenance personnel.
There has been a motion to place Bill number 91-37 COR on the agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Sabina, I saw your hand up. Good morning. You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill number 149-37 COR as amended by the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, Statistics, Research, and Planning onto the session agenda.
Thank you very much, Senator Sabina.
I can read the title.
Yes, please do.
It's an act to add a new Section 12217, Division 4, Chapter 12, Title 2, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations relative to the adoption of rules and regulations to implementing Public Law 37-6, providing temporary expedited procurement protest procedures for acquisitions funded with the American Rescue Plan, Education Stabilization Fund, or Head Start grant monies allotted to the Guam Department of Education.
On that motion, colleagues, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing? There's an objection? There's an objection. All those wishing to put Bill number 149-37 COR as amended by the committee, please signify by raising your hand. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Motion carries. Are there any other motions? If not, we will proceed. Speaker Terlahi on Bill 156-37.
Citizen Masi, I'd like to make a motion to place Bill number 156-37 COR onto the third reading file. This is again an act relative to expediting school inspections by authorizing variances, increasing small purchase limits, detailing of additional inspectors, and temporary employment of retired Government of Guam inspectors, and by amending 4722 of Division 1, Article 7, Chapter 4 of Title 26, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations. This is introduced by Therese M. Terlahi and Chris Barnett, and it was introduced on Friday. As Speaker, I did make a motion, I did send a letter to the clerks waiving the public hearing on this bill as an emergency measure, which has implications for the health and safety of the people of Guam, and specifically the students in the Guam Department of Education. And I'd like to speak on the bill.
Thank you, Speaker. You may proceed at this time.
Citizen Masi. There's been a lot of, we've had various public hearings regarding the Guam Department of Education since the legislature unanimously passed a bill to require them to comply with sanitation rules and regulations this upcoming school year. There's been pushback, of course. I think that's natural, but on the other hand, there's also been great movement by the Department of Education, by the entire government of Guam, and what we are trying to do is to ensure that we maximize the efficiency and the movement by the government of Guam, because the Guam Department of Education cannot do it themselves. They've also looked to volunteers in their parent-teacher organizations, volunteers from other agencies. They've also sought assistance from FEMA, and through FEMA, the Guam National Guard, and the governor. So all of us in the community, we're working to open these schools safely for the students without compromising their safety, without requiring them to go online. And I think this bill is intended to assist and to expedite some of the impediments that they are facing. So the first provision of this bill.
Madam Speaker, I rise to a point of inquiry.
I'd like to finish.
Go ahead.
On the point of order, hold on, Speaker. On the point of order, Senator Fisher.
Yes, I've received a copy of Bill 156-37. There is no section 4722 of Division 1, Article 7, Chapter 4 of Title 26, Guam Rules and Regulations.
I'm going to take that as
I will
Speaker.
respond to that, Madam
Yes,
Speaker.
please proceed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
She will proceed, Senator Fisher.
I will yield yes to that question.
You had a point of order, an inquiry. I yielded to the Speaker, and Speaker said she will answer that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
When?
Right now?
Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Citizen Masi. In Public Law 3744, it recognized that in the code there are two section numbers 4721. So in Public Law 37.4, we amended the second rules number 4721 and labeled variance, and we renumbered that to be 4722, so that there was only one 4721 and one 4722. So this bill is amending 4722 as renumbered by Public Law 37.
Thank you, Speaker. You may proceed, Speaker Terlahi.
Citizen Masi. All right, so I was just going to do a very brief breakdown of the bill. So the first deletes a line under the variance rules and regulations. So all schools, we're coming, the Department of Public Health, their Division of Environmental Health is coming down and really enforcing those rules, the sanitation rules, as we expect them to. And however, the rules allow for variances for incidences where a variance from the requirement of a particular rule where the school submits an alternate plan to address the potential public hazards and nuisance. And so the Guam Department of Education has submitted many of these. At the last hearing, they said 140. We also received a report from the Department of Public Health and Social Services that showed all the variances that they had received and their action on those variances. And that report shows that they have actually acted on almost all of the variances, either requesting DOE for additional information or additional measures to mitigate the public health hazard. For example, air conditioning. Department of Education has requested an overall or a mass variance request for air conditioning based on, and their mitigation is that they are procuring air conditionings. The purchase orders or the contracts have already been let out, and so they are just trying to get enough air cons on island to implement that. In the meantime, so they have applied for a variance for air cons across all the schools that need air cons. And public health, my understanding is that they do not grant that variance unless there is another way that the Department of Education is mitigating the heat in the classrooms so that the heat is still within their rules and regs. So I think the mitigations that they've allowed so far are there are fans and utilizing other classrooms instead of the classrooms without air cons. Different things, but that's just one example. So, however, it has come to our attention that the director, he believes he is not able to issue a variance if a school has failed inspection, meaning J&K failed their inspection the first time. They wanted a variance on certain things. He was not able to issue it after they failed their inspection. And so we want to make sure that they can issue variances after, when the schools actually find out what they might need a variance for, before the schools are inspected, and even concurrently during inspections. And this, I believe, will be a very efficient and expeditious process. And we have seen public health willing to put in the work. So they set up 3 teams to inspect these schools, and they have a team that is reviewing the variance requests. And the director has promised me that he will continue to do that expeditiously if we remove this language that he thinks does not allow him to allow for a variance after inspection is done. So that's one. The second item on this bill is a small purchase limit, and this was at the request of the Guam Department of Education. And in our hearings that we have had, we've had budget hearings, we've had status hearings, we had oversight hearings on their ability to open these schools for the school year. And this one is will allow small purchase limits for the Guam Department of Education for the remainder of fiscal year 2023 and the first 6 months of 2024. In other words, just for the school opening, we're increasing it to $250,000 for all items. That's at their request. They believe this would allow them to purchase those items that they need in faster, obviously. So The other sections of the bill are pretty much self-explanatory. It's to authorize the governor to detail inspectors from the Department of Public Works, Guam EPA, the Guam Fire Department, or other agencies with inspectors who can be trained by the Division of Environmental Health to assist environmental health inspectors in school inspections up until December 31, 2023. Personally, I believe the governor has this authority, but just in case, we want to put it in there because right now, they're utilizing 3 teams of inspectors. That means they can inspect 3 schools at a time. But we're hoping that with DOE's efforts and the community's efforts, there will be more schools ready to inspect and that we could use additional inspectors at that time. The last section is temporary employment of retired Government of Guam inspectors. This is also at the request of the Department of Public Health and Social Services that if they could rehire, and I looked through our budget bill, we did not allow them this authority in the budget, as we did for many other agencies to hire retired personnel. So we're allowing them to hire retired inspectors in case they are available to assist in expediting these inspections or these review of variances. So all of this bill is intended to just continue the path that they are on, but to expedite some of those things if they've been clogged up for whatever reason, and I'm just hoping those are not political reasons. I do believe that the schools can do this. I think we're not all happy with the plans to double session, that's actually going to have to happen. But even for that, we need a set amount of schools to be ready and so that they can make the double session plans. And so this, I think, will get us faster to that. And that's the goal of this bill. And so I beg my colleagues for their assistance in helping to expedite these things.
Thank you, Speaker Terlahi. Anyone wishing to speak? Minority Leader, you have the floor. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I renew my concern about this bill being a hodgepodge, as it was talked about, a goulash of different subjects in violation of our standing rules. That said, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, when you're going to go from one subject to another, you really cannot have just one simple conversation in this bill. Because you're looking at, right now, 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're looking at 4 different subjects, okay, that we're trying to address in this bill. And, I think it would behoove this body to be able to hear from the individuals who are supposed to be affected by this how this is going to be able to assist in getting the progress of getting the schools open. I'm a little confused here in that while we're calling this an emergency session because such an emergency exists, and some of these things we're giving authorizations up until the end of the year. When is this emergency going to end? So with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to move to that we be able to resolve into the Committee of the Whole, bring in GDOE and Public Health so that we can talk to them about how this is going to be able to assist. Much less, I don't see a fiscal note for this. And there are 8 positions here, there are provisions that are in here that are going to have some financial impact. And for us to be able to do our due diligence in being able to provide, if this is in fact an emergency, the tools that are necessary to get them through, I'd like to be able to hear from them on how this was going to be able to help. You know, right now, you know, I'm looking at this and we're going to say, authorize the detail inspectors. How many inspectors? Temporary employment of retired government inspectors. How many people are we going to temporarily detail? How many people do we need to get past this emergency? To deal with this emergency? And the best people to be able to provide it are the individuals that we can call before us in the committee of the whole. So I move, Madam Speaker, that we resolve into the committee of the whole with the purposes of being able to discuss this bill in the various components that it has and be given the flexibility to bifurcate the discussions as we're going through this.
Minority Leader, are you asking for a ruling from legal?
Objection.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion, Madam Chair.
There's
Objection.
an objection.
Yes, and a rise to a point of information.
Please
The
state
bill,
your point of
we have
information.
requested the fiscal impact from OFB, as is required under our standing rules. We have not received a response, but if you look at the bill carefully, there is no fiscal impact. There is nothing in here that authorizes any additional spending. It authorizes a review process by Division of Environmental Health, no cost. It authorizes the change of purchase limit in the procurement, no additional cost. It authorizes detailed inspectors. They can only do that if they have the money to hire them, obviously, or to detail them, and that's the governor's call. And the temporary employment of retired inspectors is the same. And I would respectfully object to going into Committee of the Whole, simply because these all came at their request. We've heard from them at hearing after hearing after hearing, and phone calls, and this is their request. And
Madam
really, it's quite, and the emergency, we put the time periods to cover opening of schools, every school possible.
Madam Speaker.
And not all of those are going to occur in this month.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Just based on that,
Point of
in
information.
on all fairness, looking at the standing rules, section 6.01 on the subject matter, and also on the 2020 edition of the Masons, pages 284 to 85, I'm going to take a moment's recess for clarification. I will at least allow you that. One moment, please. We are in a moment's recess. Oficina Legislature in Guahan is back from recess. I did, for the record, colleagues, ask the minority leader if he wanted me to check with legal counsel if the first item discussed was germane at all. My ruling on that matter, based on legal's advice and recommendation to me, was yes, it is germane. I will also act on minority leader's motion to move into the committee of the whole. Is that what you want, minority leader? There is a motion. Is
Point
there
of
an
order.
objection?
Yeah, that would have to be notwithstanding the rules, because the rules do not require us to go into committee of the whole for this type topic.
Motion notwithstanding that.
Motion notwithstanding, is there an objection? There is an objection. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion carries. Madam Speaker, I will recognize you at this time. It is 12 noon right now.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think everybody's aware that the agencies are not here for committee of the whole. This is just going to cause a delay while these environmental inspectors are waiting to see if they can do this expedited review of the schools.
Thank you.
And it's a shame, this delay.
Madam Speaker, I'm going to take a moment's recess.
We're back from recess. We are resolved into the Committee of the Whole pursuant to motion. Senator Barnett, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
There's a motion notwithstanding the rules to reconsider the motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole. All in favor of reconsidering the motion? All in favor of reconsidering the motion, please raise your hand. All in favor, please raise your hand of reconsidering the motion to go back into the Committee of the Whole. Motion fails. We're still in the Committee of the Whole. We have been waiting for quite some time now for the Superintendent of Education to come down, and it's my understanding he's on his way. Yes, Senator Barnett.
Yes, Madam Chair. Point of information, the superintendent along with the public health representative team is currently en route to the Guam Congress Hall.
We'll take a 5-minute recess. We're back from recess. And we have with us now, this is the Committee of the Whole on Bill number 156-37 COR, which is an act relative to expediting school inspections by authorizing variances, increased small purchase limits, detailing of additional inspectors, and temporary employment of retired Government of Guam inspectors, amending Section 4722 of Division 1, Article 7, Chapter 4 of Title 26, Guam Administrative Rules and Regulations. This Committee of the Whole will be chaired by myself as Speaker, or my designee. Each senator. Materials for the Committee of the Whole are in the shared session Google Drive labeled Committee of the Whole Bill number 156-37 COR. Proposed amendments must be submitted in writing to the clerks by email to sessiondrive@guamlegislature.org. Amendments not in writing will be called out of order. The rules of engagement are that we will have 3 rounds of discussion, 2 rounds for questions for the panel, with each senator allotted 5 minutes for questions, not including responses. Time to speak may not be yielded from more than one member to another. A member who yields that member's time on a question yields all that member's time on that question, and may not later speak, even if all the time yielded was not used. After completion of the 2 rounds of questions, panelists will be excused, and the 3rd round is for amendments or final comments on the bill. After we complete discussion of the bill, I will allow the sponsor to close and will entertain a motion for the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole, followed by a motion to rise from the Committee of the Whole, at which time I will report out the bill as recommended by the Committee of the Whole.
Point of inquiry, ma'am.
The panel has been sworn in, and they will introduce themselves shortly.
Point of inquiry, Madam Chair.
There's a point of inquiry, Senator Blas. Please
Thank you,
state your
Madam
point of
Chair.
inquiry.
Madam Chair, are you chairing this committee as chairman of the health?
No, as the speaker. There was no designation made in the motion, so we're going to proceed this way.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, this is obviously a health-related bill. It came out of your committee. This is chairman. This is a health-related.
There is no committee on this bill. We will proceed with the panel to introduce themselves. We'll begin, I guess, with the Deputy Superintendent
Madam Speaker, I'm not done with my point of inquiry.
Oh, please state your point of
Thank you,
inquiry,
Madam Speaker.
Senator.
Madam Speaker,
Is it related to the rules?
This is related to the rules of engagement and rules of this body. Obviously, the chairperson of the committee of the whole is the chairperson of that oversees the the committee that this would normally fall under. So my question is, why are you as the speaker, as opposed to the chair of health, which you are?
I am the chair of health. I
Okay,
do not
so
deny that.
if-
This
okay.
is a motion. We come into committee of the whole, notwithstanding the rules. There are no rules to go into committee of the whole for non-appropriation
sorry, Madam
bills.
Chair,
So
but
we are
I
here,
made that-
notwithstanding the rules.
I made that motion. I never
So-
said notwithstanding. You said it. I didn't. I made that
Well,
motion.
there is no rule to allow us to go into committee of the whole for non-appropriation
Madam
bills.
Chair, don't
So
put
we are
words in my
here,
mouth, Madam Chair.
and we
I
did
did not make the
accommodate.
motion notwithstanding.
Senator, you're out of order.
I am not out of order.
You
You
are
are
out
out
of
of order, Madam
order.
Chair.
You wanted the committee of the whole. We are here, and we're trying to proceed.
Yes,
As
but I did not
efficiently
make a
as we
notwithstanding
can.
motion in that motion. I did not make a notwithstanding motion. Go back and look at the tape. There was no notwithstanding.
Well, we are here notwithstanding the rules because there is no rule to be in committee of the whole on non-appropriation bills.
Who made that motion for a notwithstanding? You were sitting at the chair. You
Senator,
can't make a motion.
regardless, we are here. Would you like to proceed? Because we would like to proceed.
We are going to proceed as
All
you
right,
as
thank you.
committee and chair.
If I could please introduce the panel.
Madam Chair,
Who has been
point
here
of
waiting for
inquiry?
us.
Point of inquiry?
Is it a point of order?
Yes, point of order. Then
What is
if
the
I
point
need
of
to, I
order?
would
Please
like
state
a
your
legal.
rule
Yes,
and
I
your
would
point
just
of
like
order.
legal for legal to give us an
You
interpretation.
can go talk to legal, please.
Well, I think we should
We
pause.
are here, and we have been waiting pursuant to the motion to go
Right.
into committee of the rule.
I'd
And
like
we waited
legal-
prior to going into session for a caucus, And we are
Madam
now
Speaker,
in
there's
session.
no reason why you would want to not hear what legal has to say. Why would you
I have
not?
consulted legal. You may consult legal.
Okay, then
Thank
can
you.
we have an interpretation from legal then? If you've
Please go
consulted,
talk to them. I'm not proceeding against the rules. We went into committee of the whole. That's where we will begin.
Okay.
If I could please introduce the panel. Please introduce yourself and state your name and your position for the record. And thank you for coming down.
Half a day, Madam Speaker. My name is Peter John Camacho. My name is Peter John Camacho. I am the Deputy Director for the Department of Public Health and Social Services.
Half a day, Madam Speaker. My name is Francine Salas. I am the Acting Chief Environmental Public Health Officer for the Division of Environmental Health for Public Health.
Thank you. Maybe if we can be.
Half a day, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Franklin Kooperners. I am the Acting Deputy of Finance and Administrative Services.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Eric Swanson, Superintendent of Guam Department of Education.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Cruz, Acting Deputy Superintendent for Educational Support and Community Learning.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker and Senators. Joe Sanchez, Deputy Superintendent, Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you very much. So all of the panel members, with the exception of Joe Sanchez, were sworn in. Oh, is that already? Okay.
Point of order, Madam Speaker. Point
again,
of order.
for the record, all of the panelists were sworn in
Point of
by the Sergeant
Point of order,
Arms.
Madam
Yes,
Speaker.
please state your point of order.
Thank you. I did speak with legal counsel, and the point of order, Madam Speaker, is that I think you lied to us. You said that you spoke to legal, and according to legal, she has to look it up to give us the answer to my question. So I'm asking that we take a short recess to hear what legal has to say, because obviously she needs to look it up. If she did give you that interpretation, it didn't give me the interpretation, Madam Speaker. And you asked me to go over there and ask, and I did, and I'm asking a short recess so we can get the interpretation.
Please proceed to talk to legal, and we will come
Madam
back
Speaker,
to you
you
then
cannot
on this
continue
panel.
on if we can't get legal. You claimed that legal gave you the okay to do this, and when I went to legal, they're still looking up the law that allows this, and it's not true. So, Madam Speaker, for you to continue on after you asked me to go to speak to legal, and I don't have an interpretation from them because they're still reviewing it, then how is it possible that allows you to sit there as the speaker instead of the committee on chair? Madam Speaker,
As opposed to who,
simple.
Senator? Your point of order? Do you
As
have a
opposed to
rule that we are
committee-
violating? Can you
Committee on the
cite the
whole
rule?
should be chaired by the chairman, and you are the chairman of health, so it's a matter of just
Thank you. Thank you.
gaveling in as
Then
health
we are
chair.
in order and we will proceed. Is there anyone who had questions as to the rules or the panel members? If not, then we will proceed. Again, 5 minutes for the first round. Senator Taitukwi, would you like to proceed? I can come back to Senator Taitukwi. Senator Fisher here? Senator Fisher? Senator Taitukwi, you are recognized on your first round.
Madam Speaker, I'd just like to make it known into the record as we move forward that, coming into the committee of the whole, it's not called anything else, it's committee of the whole, that you're presiding as a speaker.
Senator, is
instead of
this your
committee
first
chair.
round? Please start the time.
No, actually, I was advised by legal to basically state this for the record, so don't
Do you have
start
a
the
point
time.
of order? Or otherwise, you're out of order.
Okay, well then, point of order.
Yes, please
That-
state your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to claim it for the record that you are doing these proceedings in the capacity of a speaker and not the committee chair of health. However, I've been asked to make sure that this is part of the record because we are in the committee of the whole.
Thank
So
you.
just
I
want
did
to make
state
it-
that for the record. Titus Masi, you may begin round one. Senator Taitukwi, you're recognized.
Thank you. This is Department of Public Health. There was a letter that was sent out to the superintendent on July 26th. Do you have that letter?
Would you clarify which letter, Senator?
Sure. This letter was dated July 26, 2023. It was directed to the superintendent, Dr. K. Eric Swanson, superintendent.
From who?
From Department of Public Health and Social Services. Mr. Art Augustine, the director, and it was sent to them on July 26th.
I don't have that letter right in front of me. My apologies.
Where's the, a minute. I'll send it to you, Peter John, and if you can, give me 1 sec.
Senator Taitukwi, please send to the clerk as well if you're going to question about a letter on the record. So he can also upload it to the drive.
Absolutely. Will do, Madam Speaker. Let me go ahead and send this to Mr. Peter John so he has it.
Senator Taitukwi, I do have a copy of the
Oh,
letter.
great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. If you could please read that into the record.
Dr. K. Eric Swanson, Superintendent, Guam Department of Education.
Excuse me, has the panel been sworn in? Oh, okay, thank you.
Announced that earlier, yes.
Thank you. 501 Mariner Avenue, Barragata, Guam, 96913. Dear Superintendent Swanson, buenas and saludo. I am reaching out to you regarding the status of school inspections of the Guam Department of Education schools. Public Law 37-4 mandates the Department of Public Health and Social Services, DPHSS, to inspect all GDOE schools prior to renewing their sanitary permits. The Division of Environmental Health, DEH, has developed a plan for the inspections required by Public Law 34-7. Effective July 24, 2023, DEH will be deploying 3 teams to conduct inspections concurrently of 3 different schools. The plan was to conduct the inspections based on GDOE's guidance on which facilities are ready to be inspected. On July 13, 2023, during a community informational and input sessions on school readiness virtual meeting hosted by GDOE, ADS Erica Cruz stated, "We have 40 schools that need to be inspected, and we do have a schedule. We provided a schedule for public health as to what schools we feel are ready and will pass inspection." On July 14th, 2023, DEH received a request from GDOE to inspect Louis P. Untalan Middle School and to re-inspect John F. Kennedy High School and Atacao Elementary School. On July 18th, 2023, during the legislative oversight hearing, GDOE schools were categorized into phases 1 through 3, with Deputy Superintendent Joseph Sanchez stating the 10 schools that are going to be inspected. Those will coincide with phase 1. The schools will be ready to open, but then we will have to wait for every inspection to actually take place. On July 20, 2023, Acting Chief Environmental Public Health Officer Francine Salas spoke with Acting Deputy Superintendent Erica Cruz about the DPSS inspection plan and sought confirmation of the schools GDOE said were ready for inspection. This communication was memorialized via email. On July 21, 2023, ADS Cruz informed ACEPHO Salas that except for Louis P. Untalan Middle School, none of the Phase 1 schools are ready for inspection as confirmed by ADS Cruz, and it would be another 2 weeks before GDOE believed the Phase 1 schools would be ready for an inspection. The DPHSS is concerned that GDOE has told DPHSS their schools are not ready for inspection and would not be ready for several more weeks, while publicly GDOE has been stating their schools are ready for inspection and GDOE is simply waiting for DPHSS to conduct the inspections. I am respectfully requesting your assistance in providing DPHSS with an accurate list of schools GDOE believe are ready for inspection by DEH. An accurate list is necessary for DEH to allocate its resources most effectively. We look forward to working with GDOE to ensure the schools provide a healthy and safe environment for the students, teachers, and school personnel. For any questions you may have on this matter, please contact Francine Salas, Acting Chief Environmental Public Health Officer of DEH at 671-922-2541 or via her email at francine.salas@dphss.guam.gov. Thank you for your attention to this serious matter. Respectfully, Arthur Houston Augustine, MHR Director.
Thank you, Mr. Camacho. Mr. Camacho, have you received a response from DOE?
I don't know, ma'am. I don't believe we have.
Has there been connection between, okay, then you haven't received a response. So my question now is to DOE, the superintendent. This letter was submitted on July 26th. Have you submitted a response to public health?
Initially, our response to that letter was to receive it. It was provided to me after it had been put in a public press release, but we have been working closely with our colleagues at Public Health, in fact, even as late as today, working through strategies to be able to conduct inspections at a higher rate and with more success. And they now have the capacity to do 3 a week, and we are able to support that. And so far, we've had a lot of success with the ones that have been done.
Are you done? Okay, well, so then you have not officially, other than acknowledged receipt of your letter, and that's to the extent of it from DOE, correct? I just want to make that clear that other than that, you have not provided anything else, any letter. I don't want to miss anything.
I have not provided a letter, but we have met actually on Zoom as a group and had a quite cordial conversation and have planned out and mapped out a way forward.
Okay, did you have any discussion with regarding variances?
I'm sorry, could you restate
Have you
that?
had any discussion with public health regarding variances, the issue of variances?
We have discussed variances and the purpose and the means that they could be used.
And what are they?
We have agreed that if we can address variances as first of all, an area to be considered for immediate mitigation, and then with follow-up of a plan for remediation and completely repairing, so that it's a two-step process that we would monitor together and report back to them.
How soon was this discussion regarding variances with Public Health and DOE? And if you weren't on board at the time, maybe your assistant superintendents can actually answer the question, because I do realize, sir, that you were not here that long. So when was the discussion of variances between DOE and Public Health?
When did you start discussions? Yeah. My team has been discussing the use of variances and applying for them well in advance of that letter.
Can you give me a time and date, please? Mr. Cooper Nurse might be able to, or Erica?
I was going to give you the exact date, but I communicated with Ms. Francine last week.
But when did the discussion of variances come into play? When was the first discussions on the issue of variances?
This topic has been ongoing since this bill, or since this law has been enacted.
Since Public Law 34-7. So the
Yes.
discussions has been started since July 24th. Well, no, I'm sorry.
No.
Since the passage of this bill, Public Law 34-7, is that right, Erica?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's been quite some time in discussion. Was there any recommendations to Public Health, or did Public Health have any recommendations? Maybe it's twofold. Let me go ahead and start with Public Health. Was Public Health have any recommendations onto the issues of variances and why it was so important to make these changes in the law that was passed on Public Law 37-7?
Good afternoon, Senator.
Good afternoon. Thanks.
So our current regulations prior to the passing or lapsing into law of Public Law 37-4 allowed for variance. And so by definition, a variance is an exemption. And so the normal course of action prior to Public Law 37-4 is the variance would be submitted with a plan. The portion in the regulations is cited and why the school is unable to meet the regulation. And from there, it would be subject to the approval of the director and not as authorized representative. So the main thought behind it was really the safety of the children. So it's not a blanket free pass to allow for any sort of major deficiency not to be addressed. And so that was the whole impetus behind it.
Francine, can you tell me whether the director has the authority to look at a variance, an issue, something that, like, let's say magic marker on a desk, right? And look at that and actually a letter coming from DOE saying this does not pose a health issue or a health risk to them, so they ask for a variance, right? That's usually how it goes. But is that true? Can that be done by the director?
It wouldn't be something that small. The question would be...
But even though if it's that small, because I'm hearing comments, it's things that small that are hindering the schools from moving forward and getting clearance. So let's take the magic marker or someone that marked a desk.
Okay. If it cannot be remedied on the spot and it cannot be remedied in the duration of the inspection, then yes, you could submit a variance request. That being said, this is before the passage of Public Law 37-4. If because it passed, and that subsection A, which Bill 15637 proposes to strike out, if it had potentially led, let's say it is a one demerit deficiency, if it would have potentially led to the school not passing inspection, it's not something that the director is authorized to or will sign off on, as anything cited for that led to the suspension of the permit is ineligible for a variance to be approved.
I see. So public health, have you requested for any kind of remedy with public health regarding any kind of variances, like on options that we can remedy the issue on moving forward, especially demerits? Mr. Joe Sanchez, I think he's worked quite a bit. Oh, I'm sorry, see Joe. Hi Joe, how are you? Mr. Sanchez, have you discussed any alternatives on trying to remedy this issue with these simple, things like a marker on a desk, the black magic marker that's pushed, and things that doesn't really pose a health issue to our students? What have you done with public health to try and remedy that?
So I don't work directly with public health. It's actually Deputy Superintendent Cruz, but I can tell you that the conversations that continuously come up is, yes, trying to remedy these small items, for example, the marker, but a lot of the schools who brought that up are not considering that to be a major issue, right? Because they're like the 1 point, 2 points here or there. They do add up, and they are things that we've told the schools, please do not lose points for like little things. Like, one school, I'll give you an exact example where they didn't put soap in the restrooms because there's no students. But we reminded them, hey, public health expects everything to be ready as though there were students there. So they were able to quickly remedy that and put soap in there, and then they didn't lose that point. But yes, those are examples that exist, like the marker and the air freshener and things like that. But we're working with the schools to make sure that all those little items are not present. So we address those. Okay. It's really more the big ticket items that we've been discussing with them about. We call them the big 8, which is 6 demerits, right? So air conditioning, we know everybody is going to have an issue with air conditioning throughout the schools. So just an example, air conditioning, restrooms, trash can lids, we have plans for all of those items. And, Deputy Cruz meets regularly and speaks to public health about that. So they've been kind of negotiating, but the concern that Ms. Francine noted is that we are aware of, that if a variance were to, address a failure, they wouldn't be able to do that, which for us really doesn't help, because our push has always been to address the big 8, because the big 8 comes up to about 42 to 46 demerits. If we were to get a variance, and just to clarify, a variance is not a waiver, right? We're very clear with the schools, it is not a waiver. We are just asking to simply move forward with our mitigation plans and our efforts to address these items. For example, the AC issue, 6 demerits, but we actually have a contract that's going to move forward in the next couple of weeks. We're just waiting for that delayed period to handle protest.
But Joe, you mentioned that the variance is not a waiver. Now you're talking about before the bill, the Public Law 34-7. You're talking about something before. But if Public Law 34-7 did not pass, then these variances would have a waiver, but it doesn't mean, like you said, right? So you're talking about before Public Law 34-7.
Technically, by definition, variance is not a waiver anyway, regardless of what the law said, right? Right. It's the only condition in the law that we were told by public health, and then we later kind of understood it, is that it restricts them from approving a variance that would have an impact on passage.
Erica, can you tell me how many schools did not pass because of variances issues that were not in the 6 points or issues, the smaller ones?
Yeah, they're like the big ticket items.
Not the big ticket item ones.
The 6 demerits, such as the HVAC.
Can you tell me how many schools did not pass the inspection due to the smaller ones, smaller variances, not the big ticket items?
I won't be able to give that information to you right now. However, the schools that have been inspected in the last 2 weeks have all passed inspection.
But prior to that,
Mhm.
you don't know how many schools could have passed if it was below the smaller ones, the variant. Do you have the, can you get the number later on?
I can get you that information. I have a copy of all the inspections. In fact, I've given
On the
it to
smaller
Mr.
ones.
Barnett, Senator Barnett.
By the way, how many demerits before it fails?
41.
41, right? Okay. And the smaller ticket
41
ones?
is fail, 40
Okay.
is passing.
Okay, 40 is passing. Okay, the other question I have, how much time do I have? 36. So basically what we're doing is just on this variance is so that public health has the ability to waive, like they've done in the past, and or get a clearance from the director to allow them to move forward, but yet they have to follow through with.
Yes, that's actually correct, Senator, but it's always within the mind of the safety of the children and the safety of the school.
Absolutely.
So when the director is reviewing them, that's what he has in mind. What is the plan from GDOE? How are they going to accomplish it? And what is the time frame at which they're going to accomplish? And in the meantime, what are they going to do to still provide safety as per the regulation?
How many more schools do you have on the books to inspect?
Oh my goodness. I think we're at 6, so minus 41, we're at 35?
35 schools more to go, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And of those 35 schools, are a lot of them have big ticket items, schools?
Yeah. Yes.
Erica? Yeah, sorry.
Yes, I would say yes. Mainly our air conditioners.
Would a variance, if you don't have air conditioner, but you have windows that can open up,
Yes,
would
we
that
can.
pass?
With a screen, if you have a screen.
Right.
Ceiling tiles, floor tiles, lighting, such as our diffusers and our sleeves, restrooms, waste containers with the lids, drinking fountains, and vector control.
Okay, my time is up, and it goes to public health too as well.
And
If
that's
there's
the
no
big
air
eight.
conditioner, but there's windows, would you pass it?
Mrs. Masi.
Public health is just, would you pass it?
Yes, if the windows are open and there is screens, we've been presented with variance requests that said they would put fans into the classroom to try to meet the temperature and humidity regulation. And then it's also been presented where they would move classes to actual classrooms that meet that temperature and humidity requirement, which would be potentially classrooms that have air conditioning as well already.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Fisher, Senator Kanata, Senator San Augustine, Senator St. Nicholas. Did you have any questions for the panel? Round one.
Good afternoon, panel. I have nothing to say. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Senator Lujan?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Actually, welcome to the panel this afternoon. Thank you for being here. I know how busy you guys all are. Can I ask from GDOE exactly, I know, Mr. Superintendent, you just came on board, so you obviously have probably your go-to person that's in charge of this recovery efforts. Who may that one person be that you rely on for the recovery efforts?
The immediate senior staff that you see here with me are the folks that I rely on. They have the most experience with it, and they have folks in their chain that are actually on the boots on the ground doing the work with the schools. Okay,
so the senior staff you're talking about are the ones with you up there now, right? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The senior staff that you have with you right now, are they authorized to move forward with procurement? at this point?
Yes, Senator, we are. For procurement, yes.
Okay. And facilities and maintenance and things of that nature as well, if that's there?
So facilities and maintenance, it's always going to be a challenge given the circumstances of our facilities and the workforce that we do have, but we are doing our best with the resources. Correct.
Okay. So my question is here because I got to quote one of your board members, Mr. Angel Sablan, who said that that he doesn't see that the delay of the school opening to the 23rd might deliver school to its the schools to the standards. Can you, again, I know they're policy, they're not operations, but actually they're a lot closer to you guys than we are. And so him saying that, can you give me a reason as to why a board member would say as such?
I didn't understand the question. I wasn't aware of that comment. It hasn't been brought to me. And I do have the latitude to make adjustments to the calendar by direction of the board, and I believe that we can have sufficient numbers of school passed so that we can open with some creative scheduling, obviously, because we can't get to all of the schools by the time we get to the 23rd, but delaying the start of school beyond that day works a great deal of hardship in the community because this is not a COVID situation. All of our families are up and about and being engaged in the economy of the island. So that presents some problems. I expect that we should have the ability to have all of our elementary students in a face-to-face education. We might have to use online for secondary kids for a short period of time. But the situation with each school is fluid in terms of its state of readiness because we're making repairs and getting more things installed every day. So those lists do shift.
Is it safe to assume that it's all hands on deck at this point?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and the reason why I'm asking this because I just this morning I received a call from a teacher that tried to get into her school, and that because it was blocked off, they don't have access to the school. So if it's all hands on deck, I mean, I know the teachers are not. When are they supposed to report back?
On the 3rd. On the 3rd.
Okay. So I guess they're wanting to at this point volunteer their services. And that being said, if there's all hands on deck and teachers wanting to volunteer and maybe look at their own rooms to prepare that, and they're not allowed in based on, I guess, a public health cording off of the facility.
At present, the situation with access is problematic because technically the only people who can be on site are the people who are doing the work to correct the situations that are
okay, so again, the report date for teachers is the 3rd of August. So should these facilities again remain inaccessible to the teachers to help in preparation, then it'll still be cordoned off and they still wouldn't be allowed into their particular schools, right?
Teachers are allowed as long as they're there on campus to address the inspection. So if they're going to go into their classrooms to clean, help in any way possible, it is all hands on deck. They are welcome to come on campus, but it has to be specifically to address the inspection. So if there is a miscommunication with the school administrator and a teacher, that's something that I need to correct because teachers have been coming on campus, assisting the school administrators and the staff as far as getting ready for inspection.
Okay, so if they're going to be coming to class just to address, I guess, their particular, whatever their citations may be, and they're just coming in to, I guess, get their classroom ready, they won't be able to do that unless they're addressing, I guess if the citation is the bathrooms or whatever it may be and has nothing to do with their classroom, they'll be able to access the school only if they're addressing the citation, or?
Well, if the school hasn't been inspected yet, then we don't know what they're addressing. So if they're in their classroom as addressing, let's say, mold or, you know, general cleaning, then they're allowed to be on campus.
Well, obviously, if they're going to be addressing mold, I mean, they're not experts in addressing mold, so they wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, it's a dangerous situation, is it not? I mean, for them to address the mold situation that they're not experts in addressing?
Understood. And we do have a DLAN ticket submitted to address our mold situation at our schools.
Okay.
However, school teachers are allowed to be on campus to assist, not necessarily just in the classroom, but in offices or even outside the campus.
Okay, so they're allowed now?
They've always been allowed, so I don't understand if...
Well, I don't either, and that's why I'm asking, because...
so that needs to be clarified. I do have a principals meeting on Thursday, and I will clarify that with my school administrators.
Yeah. No, and you know, that's one of the things, I mean, everybody needs to get on the same page, and that's why we asked for committee of the whole to get everybody on the same page, because you said they're allowed now, but at least my office, I'm getting called that they're not allowed because the school is cordoned off. And so if we're going to address this holistically, yeah, it has to be a concerted effort and really all hands on deck.
So my understanding and the principals that I've spoken to, they have teachers that are coming in and assisting. So it could be, I mean, I don't know how many teachers have called you, but you know, if there is one school administrator that I need to speak with, then I will speak with that school administrator. I don't know how many calls you received, but generally, we do have our teachers assisting.
Well, and my point is just we need to get everybody on the same page. So
understood.
Yeah, so it's, you know, whether it be 1 or 5 or 6 or 7 that have called, you know, all the principals and teachers all be on the same page and know what really how to go about this, and because, yeah, I mean, we're you know, we're asking the questions. We're asking to vote on the bill. We want to make sure we do the right thing and give you the tools and mechanisms to be able to move forward.
Right.
And so that's why we're needing to ask these questions and whether or not we're on the same page.
And we appreciate that, sir. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Senator Lujan. Senator Brown.
Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. But I did want to ask, has this issue been resolved with the letter that Public Health had submitted with regards to the inspections? Have these inspections resumed and are coordinated moving forward? Are the schools ready for the inspections?
Yes, the points in the letter have been resolved, and we're working very closely with Public Health.
And with regards to that, I mean, I know Public Health has previously relayed there are only so many inspections they can do. Has anything been added? Do you have additional teams available to go out and do the inspections to help facilitate, to determine whether or not these schools are cleared to be reoccupied by our students?
The current plan is for 3 teams to go out and concurrently inspect a school. So that's where we are, and we're working with GDOE to identify the schools that are going to be ready to be inspected, and then we proceed in that manner, ma'am.
And do you have a timeline? I mean, I know it was previously represented as it's going to take X amount of months to do these inspections. Are we still at that level, or have we been able to consolidate the timeline to help facilitate more inspections? And again, I don't know if some of these schools might require re-inspection. Maybe you go back and take corrective efforts and might request again for Public Health to come back and re-inspect. What are we looking at?
with the inspection on a weekly basis of 3 schools concurrently, with divided into 3 teams, we are still a couple months out. You have, it runs twofold, okay? So on one end, public health is ready to go. We also take the direction from GDOE, and that's why we work with them and we meet every week to let us know what schools are ready for inspection for the following week. And so we're moving in that direction, but at the rate that we're going at 3 schools a week, it will take a while. I mean, at 34 schools, actually, I had to correct myself on record. We're looking at 34 schools that still need to be inspected. And we have to move in tandem with GDOE because it would be fruitless for us to go and inspect a phase 3 school that isn't ready next week. So our goal is to work with GDOE as they come ready to go. So our teams are ready at 3 a week with Bill 156, and I believe the governor has the authority to bring on or transfer some former inspectors into public health to assist us, and we could increase our team composition to maybe 5 teams, and perhaps we could do 5 schools a week. But again, our timeline is always to try to work with GDOE and make sure that, we're having sort of a fruitful inspection and that they're ready.
Is public health anticipating, I'm assuming if these additional teams are to be created or put in place, have discussions to that effect occurred already? Of having other departments that may have the capability being brought up to speed on public health specific type of inspections? Is that something that's going to be brought online? I mean, a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to go by. Even though the school day has been pushed back by a couple of weeks, I mean, it's going to be here sooner than later. So do you have any feedback to us and the public on where public health is with that, with getting any additional assistance from other key agencies that can help facilitate your inspections?
We've not heard back from other agencies at this point, ma'am. We do have some former inspectors who have expressed an interest in assisting with inspections, but again, that's not been confirmed yet by them, but they've expressed an interest.
But no feedback from other government agencies that might be able to help you facilitate your inspections or get a crash course, I guess, on what, I'm sure you have your very specific requirements.
Yes.
For your public health inspections versus DPW inspectors or whatever the case may be.
Yes.
What time frame would it take to educate these inspectors to be in a position to facilitate? I'm sure you would divide your teams with an experienced member of public health probably, and then, have these other inspectors come on your team. But do we have any idea what it would take to facilitate that?
In terms of time frame, it really depends on where the inspector's coming from. The Division of Environmental Health actually has a few inspectors that have left the division and now work at a different agency who are familiar with conducting school inspections, and that would be, in our opinion, the fastest way to get people on board. They understand the regulations, or they were part in the development of the regulations, which would assist in them carrying out inspections. Any sort of additional help would never be turned away, but it would also be, it's almost like other staff. It would take a while to train. And someone who's a DPW building inspector may not understand the ratios that we have to abide by, the drainage stuff, the shower facilities, how many dividers you need, the dimensions that are required per regulations. So it might take a while. I mean, our regulations are actually 23 pages, which isn't very long by regulation standards, but at the same time, it's almost like teaching a new language to somebody who is not familiar with how public health does inspections.
So you would say your best bet would be to try to get some former or retired public health inspectors, and do you have an idea of how many might be interested or possible to actually form additional teams to go out there? Because at this rate, I don't think our students or our parents are going to be thrilled at the idea of, schools delayed that many weeks or months behind before the school year can even start.
We have a couple of folks that we've reached out to, and we'll continue to look at other former employees who might be interested in assisting us.
But you don't know at this moment. I mean, we're really up against the clock, so to speak. I mean, you would look at this as urgent, right? So what do you guesstimate at this time? You don't know, or?
So I think if we were to transfer within current existing employees, that would probably be your fastest bet. If you take in somebody who retired, the onboarding process is quite lengthy as well. They have to do all the same things, I think, that most other DOA employees, line agency employees have to comply with. So that may take time, and you're right, 2 weeks, 1 week, it just goes by quickly. So it may not be the fastest way, but we do have some committed help on that end as well.
Has any action been taken internally to move potential public health employees that could facilitate these inspections with you?
Yes, there have been actions to get assistance from other staff that are not in an inspector capacity, but more provide support as to the inspectors to certain tasks during the inspection that tend to be more time consuming, and it's a matter of counting, it's a matter of checking certain things, our regulations are met. And in that sense, yes, we've gotten commitment from the department internally.
And how soon can that be put in place for them actually to be in the schools doing inspections?
It's technically in place already per our plan.
So
Yeah.
they're available now?
Yes, I mean, they are a part of our team that we're dispensing out to the schools, that we're doing 3 a week.
And how many, and you're still down to 3 a week though? That hasn't
Yes.
changed. Even with these additional resources, it's still 3 a week.
Actually, the numbers improved. We were at 1 a week.
Wow, okay, no, that's good to know. That's good to know. And for DOE, you mentioned that the most recent inspections that have happened in the last couple of weeks since you've been before us, that the schools have passed. What additional schools are those that have passed? We certainly look forward to hearing that.
So we have John F. Kennedy High School passed with a C. We're pending Antolon, and my understanding is it's with a C, so I don't know. With public health, if you want to clarify that. Those are the 2 schools that have passed so far. And then prior to that, we had Inarohan Elementary and Maritza Elementary School.
Yes, those
Both
are the
with a
ones that
C.
you had indicated to us had passed. So the only one that's been added on now is JFK?
JFK passed with a C.
And we'll potentially, hopefully, hear about Antolon?
I'm sorry?
And we'll hopefully, potentially hear about Antolon?
Yes, we're waiting.
And how many of your schools now are ready for inspection, are awaiting public health?
We have
already?
3 schools that are ready for inspection. This week will be Weddingale Elementary School, Talafofo Elementary School, and Teason High School.
And so what is DOE's plan? I mean, I know you've moved back publicly the start of the school date, but what is your plan at this rate? Obviously, there's going to be a substantial, large number of schools that will not be inspected in time.
We have a committee who is working on the potential of double session with schools that have passed inspection. Obviously, we do want our elementary school kids to be face-to-face, and the last resort, obviously, for our middle schoolers and high schoolers is remote learning. However, we are looking at the schools that have passed inspection and looking at schools that are close by to those schools to do a double session, just like we did with Okadu High School and FB Leon Guerrero Middle School. So at this time, we have John F. Kennedy and Simon Sanchez working on a double session with each other. And so if we're hoping that if Talafofo Elementary School passes, they would, and MU Lujan, let's say, did not pass or did not go through inspection yet, they would double session with MU Lujan and Talafofo Elementary, for example.
You know, I would assume double session is quite a logistical thing. We've been able to do it with certain schools, 1 or 2 here or there, but With the
And
large
it's a matter
number,
of,
with the large number you're talking about, would be substantial. And then how are you going to address adequate busing
yeah, and
to
that's,
accommodate that time frame? Then on top of that, we have parents, I'm sure, that are going
and
to
that's,
work and might not have anyone to sit at home to supervise these children, even if they do go online. You
I
know, to provide
understand.
some safe supervision for these children, and teachers, I'm sure, that are sitting there with no clue what
Right.
school they're going to be in or what classroom they're going to be, that I'm sure need to, I assume they have to traditionally go in and set up their workspace and get their classroom prepared for their students and all those good things.
I would add that double session's not really desirable, especially for younger kids, but it's a lot more effective than online. We know that that does not work with small children, and it certainly doesn't work with family work schedules. Daycare and supervision is always a challenge with elementary age kids, and we'll put all of the resources we have into making that work for parents.
I'm just concerned with the information being provided that, you know, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I think we're going to still end up in a significantly challenging situation. I'm using a nice word. In order to be able to have students either online, in school, or double session. I mean, that's quite a substantial, DOE's never executed this level of
We've never been in
engagement,
this
shall we say,
position
to
before.
implement this. All the things that are being proposed have been in isolated circumstances for periods of time, but not at the level that it appears is on the table right now, taking into consideration the information public health provided to do inspections.
I would just say that combined with the typhoon, the decision point that was reached has a cascading effect that has a lot of unintended consequences, and it's our turn to deal with them. That's what we're trying to do. We can't lose another year. COVID showed us that. We cannot afford it on a number of levels. So our objective in the coming weeks is to have enough elementary schools that have passed so that we can double them up, and we're geographically placing them so that we can cut down commuting issues and transportation. That's a serious consideration as well. And our secondary schools are looking pretty good. We say save one that may have some issues, so we'll have good capacity at the secondary level.
Well, I'm hopeful. I think we all want to remain hopeful. It's just very concerning.
It is challenging. It's got me up all night, I'll tell you that.
Okay, thank you.
Senator,
I'll leave my questions for the next, unless anyone else has any other comments.
Hi, Senator, if I may add to that, because I don't want to leave the conversation just on the public health inspection part, because I know that was one of the contentious points in the letter that we got from public health. We wanted to clarify that it's not just their ability to conduct the inspections. Yes, that's a major logistical factor, but it's also making sure that we're able to pass. And that's one of our challenges, is even though they're a phase 1 school, by definition, it's not necessarily that they're ready now to be inspected. Same thing with the phase 2 schools. Even though they're estimating that 2-month period, it might be towards the end of those 2 months. And we're trying to get a tighter grip with the schools as to where they're getting their estimates. But the one area that this bill does really help is the variance section. Because if we get the top 8, and I think in discussions with a lot of folks, if these top 8 variances are approved, majority, if not all of our schools will pass. We had them all go through the self-inspection. We even asked them to be very conservative with your assessment of your school and tell us whether or not you think this is where you would lose certain points. And through our self-inspections, the preliminary data is telling us that a large majority of our schools can open within these next few weeks if these variances were approved. So I know it's not the answer to everything, but looking at options of online versus double sessions, the question is, are these variances good enough to keep our schools open and to allow us to start? Again, knowing that they're not meant to be waivers, like we have no intention of dragging our feet or saying, no, we're not going to address it, but really just allowing us to open with the understanding that we're going to move forward in addressing these particular areas.
And I'd like to add that the other part of the bill that speaks to the procurement adjustments will make it possible for us to break the work into smaller bites so we can issue a contract for one school to do one particular set of work, for example, plumbing renovation. And that brings a dollar cost in under the threshold that can get us in good shape quickly. And also use the money that we have aside from the recovery from COVID that has to be obligated anyway. So we can spend that more effectively with the proposed language.
Well, thank you. I'll just wait for my next round, but thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Thank you, Senator. Vice Speaker Tina Munoz-Barnes, Legislative Secretary Senator Shelton.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Thank you to the panel for being here. I think I heard a lot of my questions were already answered. I really appreciate your time here today. I don't want to, prolong any of this. I think all of you have very important work to do so that we can get the students back in the classroom. And the only thing that I want to know is this bill what it's going to take for us to help get more students into the classroom quicker. I think, Mr. Sanchez, you answered a little bit right now, your last statement, and I feel comfortable with that. I feel good about supporting this bill, and if there's more support that you need from our end, I hope that you'll request that from us here today. Sujos Masi.
Sujos Masi, Senator. Senator Perez, Senator Blas.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the panel for being here. I guess one of the questions, and I thank the previous speaker for asking the question, but I'd like it more succinctly, based on both public health and GDOE, the bill before you, would it be able to provide you the resources necessary? First off, this is an emergency session. Is it practical that we're going to say that the number of schools necessary to run, whether it be double session or to stay completely offline, will be ready by the 23rd of August?
I can't foresee the future, but just with my experience with the inspections and how long it takes, I don't believe that all schools would be ready by the 23rd.
Okay. Now, in recognition that there's going to be, this bill proposes to basically take away the variance and understanding, looking at public health, what is a variance?
Happy to define that for you, Senator. So per our regulations, a variance means a written document issued by the director that authorizes a modification or waiver of one or more requirements of these rules and regulations if, in the opinion of the director, a health hazard or nuisance will not result from the modification or waiver. So much how people have been viewing variances as sort of an exemption and a waiver, it may be a slight waiver how you consider it, but at the discretion of the director, and it really, the inspectors themselves, if it proposes a health hazard or there's a nuisance or something of the sort that could endanger the children or even the staff that works at the school, it's not something the director would sign off on. The variance section of 4722 actually goes into detail as to what is required and how a variance may be granted. And so there's new language in here upon showing of good cause, corrective action in progress. And so although not clearly defined in the section, it is something that the director can consider, such as some of the school's variance plans, since they're waiting for items to come in or contracts to be PO'd, then in the meantime, they're doing A, B, and C to meet the requirements.
Okay. So with regard to that, and in recognizing that when you're doing the inspections, you're doing basically a school-wide inspection, how many demerits would it take for a school to fail?
41 demerits.
41 demerits. And this is the demerits that basically you've gathered from a school-wide inspection. Now, but I'm a little confused here as to how we then can be able to prepare some classrooms, that will be able to pass inspection, but there are going to be other facility or other rooms within that facility that may not pass and may gather as many demerits that necessary, that to fail. How does then that work?
So when it comes to issuing a demerit or deficiency, it is cited once. So if there's a lighting issue in 2 classrooms and not 10, it's already cited as one. It's already cited. It counts against you. It's not per room. It's the totality of the school. So if there's repeat deficiencies, which most of the time there are, it's only counted as a demerit one time in the course of the inspection report and the course of the inspection.
Okay, I guess now the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Okay, how do 41 schools in the last 10 years pass inspection, but then all of a sudden now we find that they're not passing inspection? What changed overnight?
In 10 years, I'm not sure. I do know the regulations were updated in, I believe, 2019, and the new school regulations allowed for effectiveness 5 years from enactment. And so we are inspecting based on these regulations. There's been no secret that we don't have the manpower to inspect as per statute, which is 4 times a year. But at the same time, we do respond to any sort of complaints, any potential health hazards, and if it is the school, because that's one of our higher risk populations that we need to protect, we do respond. That being said, prior to Public Law 37-4, the requirement to renew a sanitary permit did not require an inspection prior to the renewal of the sanitary permit.
Say that again?
So prior to the passage or enactment of Public Law 37-4, there was no requirement for schools that they had to be inspected before their sanitary permit was renewed.
Wow, what a revelation. I'm trying to get here as to, I guess, in totality, and I'm going to direct this to you, Mr. Superintendent, of the bill. Is there anything that this bill is lacking that would be necessary for you to try to meet those mandates or try to get these schools open quicker?
The piece that would help the most from my perspective is that we find some way to allow access for our staff when they come back to do other activities as the work is progressing, and also allow public access for registration. That's really been a problem in the community. But the other part that I think would be very helpful is the use of the variance on a selected time schedule so that we identify what has to be mitigated short term and then work with public health to do the actual retrofit or repair, whatever it happens to be, with regular reporting back to them and possibly to this body as well if you feel that that's necessary.
Public health, is that something that you're amenable to?
To allow things like Dr. Swanson was talking about registration and those kinds of things to occur, it's actually not in compliance with an active sanitary permit. Sanitary permits are for school operation. If you don't have a sanitary permit or it wasn't renewed, then no operations related to school should be occurring, with the exception in this case, what led to them failing, which would be any sort of corrective action. I'm not sure, did Dr. Swanson ask something specific or say something specific in regards to what you would need and if we can meet that?
Just general access to school, for school operations such as registration.
Yeah, that is something that doesn't fall in line with our regulations. If you do not have an active sanitary permit, you cannot conduct school operations. That being said, that is within our regulations, and that does not stop this body from creating some sort of language alternatively to do that. But that being said, and I'd like everybody to understand that there are hazards on these school sites. So when parents come, usually they bring their children. Usually it's the whole crew. And once they're on campus, there's no control as to where they go, where they're allowed to go, how you would sort of correct that or make sure they stay in a specific area. So there's some issues to consider when allowing that sort of exemption for that to occur.
Well, that's why I can appreciate this conversation, and that's why I encourage the committee of the whole, so that, you know, we can hear from both sides, and hopefully at the end of the day we can find some happy medium, some, I don't want to say compromise, but some way of being able to accomplish things so we can move things forward. You know, and sometimes it just means an open and frank conversation, and see what we can and what we cannot do. Is it possible? I'm very encouraged that you're saying that there is a possibility of being able to do this if there are some caveats and if there's some precautions and things that can be put into play. I appreciate that, and so I thank you for, you know, for this. Peter John, Section 4 of this bill, temporary employment of retired government Guam inspectors. This basically authorizes you to hire some new inspectors. Are you familiar with that? Is this something that you had asked for, or something that the public health
If it's going to bring on additional staffing, sir, we're supportive of that.
Do you have the money for this?
Yes.
You do have the money?
Yes.
Okay. So if, now, when I say do them, I guess how much money, I mean, how many staffers can you bring on with what you've got?
I think that depends on how, if we bring back retired individuals, the bill does cite that it is at a minimum of a step 1. That doesn't necessarily mean it would be hired at a step 1. So it really depends on, I mean, it's a little different in terms of what's allowable. And so I think the language actually mirrors a lot of what is in the Budget Act in terms of bringing in retired personnel back into public health for that purpose.
Well, I guess it goes to the next question that I have here is there enough time between now and August 23rd to be able to do this?
Yeah, that was my concern as well. There is a procedure at which you hire individuals within the government of Guam. And like Senator Brown had said earlier, I don't know, we'll take any kind of help we can get. We just might not get it in the time that we need it. And so that's just something we're looking at and we're realistic about.
Okay, you know, because I think that, you know, one of the things that we want to be able to provide is the opportunity to open the schools as quickly as possible. I noticed that Mr. Swanson has stepped off for a little bit. Mr. Sanchez and Ms. Cruz, what are your contingencies now if you're not going to be able to open to what you want to do on the 23rd of August?
As I said earlier, we were looking at double session with schools that have passed inspection. Obviously, remote learning is our last resort, but at this point, the plan is to look at double session, especially with our elementary school students.
Okay, how many schools do you need in each grade level to be able to get to that double session?
So we started our committee today, and we are looking, we're not in that phase right now. However, we have identified the schools and the proximity of, the geographic proximity of schools that have already passed inspection and which schools we can assign to those schools that have passed inspection.
Okay, but my question is, how many elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools are you going to need to be able to meet that mandate?
Based on earlier estimates several weeks ago, it would be at least half. Obviously, if we were to look at both the geographic area as well as numbers, we would need at least half the schools. You know, they would just pair up with each other. So we have schools that have already been preliminarily paired up because of their region. The challenge is when 2 or 3 of them are not available, then they kind of play this game of, well, we can do one school, but we can't do the other. So unless we have a perfect half, we won't be able to kind of have everybody participate. The other challenge to that is like Senator Joanne Brown earlier mentioned, the logistics, is all of this is just theoretical when we provided it to Public Works. So Public Works has not even said, yes, they can logistically do it. This is all really just planning and, you know, drawing lines from school to school. So right now, our best hope is that if we were to move forward and public health still continued to have to do the inspections, we would pass every inspection. Like, that's our kind of desire. Every time we get inspected, we would pass. And every time that school would pass, we would have the other school kind of jump on them. The phase 3 schools are the harder ones because those are the ones that we know are not going to open for a while. There is a solution that half of those schools, it's about I think 12 schools, half of those schools have said that if they were allowed to double session within themselves, as in if they were not to pass an inspection, but that inspection were due to the number of students that they have and ratios, and if they were able to work within themselves, that helps because that way, you know, they just stay within their own campus, but they just have to shut down the other half of the campus. But still, what happens is you end up having to add schools every time they pass inspection.
Yeah, I wonder, because how's that possible if the demerits are based on just one instance? If one light's out, all the lights are out, that's one demerit. How do you then say half the schools pass and the other half isn't?
We don't. That's not really how it's done. So unfortunately, if 2 rooms are out or 1 room is out and every other room is compliant, it counts as 1 demerit. Now, when we go back on reinspection, we do look at the room that was cited for correction, and so that is something we do address.
Okay, well, Madam Speaker, my time is up, so I'll wait for a second. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Duenas.
Madam Speaker, if I may, I just looked outside the TV. We have not been on air. We are not on air.
Point of information, Madam Chair, the TV in the lobby was turned off because we had a resolution presentation earlier, but we are in fact on the air and streaming as well.
Okay, thank you. I just noticed it out there, and I just wanted to verify that
Thank
this
you.
whole hearing is being recorded,
you.
not recorded, but on air. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Duenas, you're recognized.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair, and I'd like to thank my previous colleagues so far. I think we have made it clear why we wanted the committee of the whole and some great questions that have been asked. I wanted to also preface before my questions that it's no secret in our community that there's been a war of words between what Public Law 37.4 requires and what capabilities are. So what we're here today for is to find out if this mechanism that's before us is going to help us in any way going forward to do that. And that's the purpose for which many of us wanted this committee of the whole. I thank you all for being here. I know you're busy, and I appreciate your time. I think we can get through this quickly and determine the veracity of what the bill is calling for. Peter John, I want to preface this question by stating that I know your acumen, your capabilities, and your history, but I have to ask this question because my next line of questions indicates the director. So I see that there is Terry Uggan still Deputy Director of Public Health? So,
yes, sir.
So there are now 2 Deputy Directors of Public Health?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
If I could correct that, there were always 2 deputies. Remember, Lori Duenas was the one deputy, and the second deputy was Terry.
Yeah, I just remember previous letterheads that indicated one deputy was listed. I don't know how that was done. But anyways, going forward, like I said, I understand your acumen, and I know your history. So this bill calls for, in the variance and what's in 4722 as amended, on line 8, the director. So Peter John, are you here to state today that the director has reviewed the bill, and as being directed, the director would be agreeing to what's in this bill?
We actually did review the bill, Senator, and I can say that we are, the team at Public Health is on the same page with regards to some of the things that the bill is offering.
Okay, so then going to page 2, line 1, once again, the director and not his representative or her representative. And this basically is in all the language that is modifying the now in this bill struck provision under A, which is the current status as Ms. Francine had stated in terms of what variances allow for and don't allow for.
Yes.
Okay. So once again, on the same page, line 7, I must go over to the Director and Superintendent of Education. So the bill calls for a reporting requirement on every 5th day of each month in requests for all variances by GDOE. Are you in concert to comply with that directive of the bill?
Yes, we're agreeable to provide that information.
Okay, so I'll redirect once again. Reporting requirement for GDOE public schools is how it's titled. So I want to go then once again to Peter John. The Director of Public Health will be in compliance with reporting under, well, B, that's struck at this point, but the Director would be willing to comply with this.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
If I could just note, they submitted reports on June 5th and July 5th, 2023, the whole list of variances report.
That's fine, Madam. Madam Speaker, I think you can probably concur that there have been many press releases that have gone out in the last several weeks stating positions on who did what did where, when, how, and all iterations of such. I am being very disciplined to ask these questions before I vote on this bill so that I can feel comfortable that we put tools in toolboxes, and then later on it doesn't say, I wanted a pipe wrench and you gave me a screwdriver. That's the point of my line of questioning. So, Francine, I have to come back to you because this has to be very clear, and I know my other colleagues have asked this, but the issue of Section 4, and not only transferring but hiring, what is Public Health's assessment in terms of the capacities to transfer under the executive branch, any and all other agencies which have the capabilities, as you've mentioned, to be able to either be deputized or be realized as inspectors?
My understanding, Senator, is that the governor already has the power to move or transfer any employees where there's a need within the line agencies, of course.
And that was the answer I was looking for. Once again, because we don't want to be accused down the line of having duplicated something in paperwork that basically exists, and then we are now holding the bag once again for not having accomplished the mission of actually providing for an opportunity for this piece of legislation to complete the job. Mr. Swanson, I think we need to just, Superintendent, we have to be very clear about one more thing here. Francine has already made it clear that for the reasons of liability and the like, they're not going to budge on the issue of registrations. What are the other areas, once again, that are problematic for GDOE right now in terms of who is not allowed on campus?
Initially, if we cannot get an interim conditional permit to open, then that moves us into the double session environment. So I don't know that we can go in that direction, but if we had the ability to inspect, identify, and then put the mitigation steps in place so that we can go ahead and open the school, each one of them, with the provision that we have the solution steps in place too, which could be a contract, it could be our internal maintenance people, but on a timeline that we mutually agree on. That would be the most preferential. All I know is for teachers and kids to do the work they need to do, we need to get them back in their buildings as soon as we possibly can, because the other side of there's other pieces to this puzzle, not the least of which is we're a CEP system which feeds students at no cost. Half of our students, the food they get is the food they get at school. So we need to be able to get that mechanism stood up and operating as quickly as possible. I also am committed to not putting anyone in a facility that's unsafe, whether they're adult or a child. I will not do that.
I sympathize with that, so I have to ask this question. Is this bill going to allow for that, or do we need to add some language, or can this be an interagency agreement based on this meeting?
I don't like to micromanage through legislation, but I think we have a positive working relationship with public health that we can solve these problems if we've given the framework to do that in.
Francine, is there language in here, or Director, is there a Deputy Director, is there language in here that you see that would allow you to facilitate that allowance outside of parents enrolling students?
Senator, as Superintendent Swanson has indicated, we do have that collaborative relationship with them, despite words here and there and wherever. But I think the point he made, and I agree with, is that there is a sense of wanting to work together to make sure that the schools are going to be open for our students, for our children, so that and they can go to school in a safe environment, notwithstanding that there are some issues that need to be addressed. I think one of the things that, for your consideration, is that perhaps a repeal of 37.4, right? To be able to allow the schools to be opened, but however, we still will have to make the effort working with GDOE, to address all the deficiencies that had been identified previously, so that we can then continue to move forward working with them to make sure that those environments are safe.
My time is up. I'll listen to the balance and look forward to round two.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Parkinson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I got some questions for Department of Public Health and Social Services. Frankly, I guess my first question is, if we pass the bill as it is, will this solve your problem? Will this allow the schools to open in time?
way the bill is written will expedite some of the concerns, i.e. the section of the bill that actually strikes through Section A in terms of allowing for variances to be approved before, during, and after an inspection is completed. That being said, we still are faced with the same logistical problem where we only have so much staff, and we can only do this in the manner that we are doing to give a proper quality inspection. And at the same token, we are also working with GDOE and their availability in terms of what schools are ready to go. So it's collaborative. If we were to look at it and let's say tomorrow all schools were ready to go for inspection and we're confident they'd pass inspection, we can't meet a demand of 34 schools in time for August 23rd. And keep in mind, Senator, this is not, let's say a school were to fail inspection. If that were the case, we'd have to go back and re-inspect. Corrections would have to be made. Variances would have to be submitted, and we'd have to go and see if those variances are in place. And so it would it'll help, but by no means, early estimates will say, unless the schools are all ready to go, even that, I don't think we're ready.
Okay, if we were to pass this bill magically yesterday, how many schools would be available for inspection tomorrow?
Well, that is at GDOE's time frame.
Yeah, I guess that's my question to you guys then. If this bill were to pass yesterday, how many schools would be ready for inspection tomorrow?
Currently, we have 3 schools that are ready this week, and then the following week we'll have another 3, and so forth. So we'll have three schools a week available for inspection.
Okay. Then I guess I have another question for DPHSS. On July 14th, I saw that you had a memorandum to the Attorney General of Guam, a request for guidance on the issuance of renewal of sanitary permits. I see, as the way the law is written now, that inspections are required as often as necessary and at least every 3 months, or else they can't, as far as I understand from the law, they can't issue sanitary permits. Were you able to receive an opinion from the Attorney General on whether or not they need, because the thing is that provision itself goes beyond the schools. That talks about all establishments. So do all establishments have to be inspected every 3 months, or do we have to, or under threat of closure? What was the feedback from the Attorney General's office?
We're still waiting for a response from the AG's officer.
The AG has not responded.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
We've actually sent a follow-up memo as well.
Okay, because that is one of the things that we are trying to amend here in today's law. And so if we're going to amend that, I think I would like to ask the Attorney General if we don't change this, do we have to close businesses every 3 months if they don't get inspected? So at this time, I'd like to motion to add the Attorney General to this panel.
We are not discussing the businesses, so point of order. This is only for schools. The regulations that we're discussing only control schools. And at this point, only public schools.
The regulation that they were discussing is being amended, says that all businesses get closed after 3 months.
In the bill?
Yeah.
This bill is talking about 4722 variances, and this is under the rules of school sanitation rules and regulations.
But isn't there a section being amended under 2104, inspections as often may be deemed as necessary, and they are scratching out at least once every 3 months?
There is no such section.
Senator, if I may, that is actually in statute. That's Title 10 of the Guam Code annotated Chapter 21 in regards to sanitation as a whole. So it doesn't say, I'm happy to read the section that you're referring to.
Sure, ma'am.
Which does, and I quote, as often as may be deemed necessary, and at least once every 3 months, the director shall inspect every establishment or activity subject to this chapter. That being said, it doesn't state anything in the language that they will not get a sanitary permit, that we will shut them down, or anything of that sort. So it just says the director shall, as often as may be deemed necessary, and at least every 3 months, we have to inspect. It's just not, the language wherein we wouldn't renew a permit is not blanket and is not in our law. Actually, Public Law 37-4 required that specifically for GDOE schools.
Okay. And I guess you were saying that this won't solve the problem, but it will help. I guess what legislative changes would we need to make to help facilitate this and solve the problem?
I think I can only speak for public health. Perhaps this is one key to the entire system that maybe will help expedite, but I believe one of the other concerns was the compliance timeline and the ability to meet that compliance timeline. I think I'm at an echo. Yeah, but at the same time, Senator, that's not at our, it is GDOE's, per 37-4's requirement to meet full compliance by school year 2023-2024. And our efforts would only be to help them by the inspections, the re-inspections, the variance request submissions. But again, all that takes time. So you would be sort of inspection 1, you're passing with a score of 38. Now you can submit some variances, but I still got to go back and re-inspect. Or I got to send my inspectors out there to re-inspect, which is where the prolonging happens, although a good fix. But then I think the willingness, you'd have to ask GDOE if they can meet what's ready, and we would try to be ready to go with the ability to hire, with the ability to bring in retirees, and to work in our teams that we planned.
Okay. And just as a hypothetical, if the legislature were to do a full repeal of the bill, of the original bill, and restored the due date to June 30th of next year, would public health be able to make its mandate then?
We can. We would work with GDOE. I will preface again with that. It really is dependent on the readiness of Department of Education. We've on our end, the only thing I can speak for is we've already limited the amount of services that we do conduct to have a lot of our staff focus on conducting the inspections. Earlier we had quoted we were at 1 school a week. We now bump that up to 3. The variances could also help expedite, but it also, remember, the variances have to be submitted by GDOE. They have to kind of make sense. They have to still not create any health hazards or nuisance for the students or anybody who's occupying the school or going to school. So there's some of those things that we need to respond to. That's kind of where we're at.
Is the statutory requirement for inspections every 3 months, is that going to be problematic for DOE because now they're going to be competing for the same pool of inspectors?
It might be. I know in the past, I believe when Bill 2937 was being heard in a public hearing format, we have said we can't even meet that mandate, much less the inspections of GDOE schools, which include, the re-inspections, the follow-up inspections. And so there would be difficulty in the ability of us to meet that mandate. And Public Law 37-4 actually put the requirement in place annually, which again, it would just sort of exacerbate the issue and the challenge we're already faced with.
Would it make more sense for renewals to be required 1 year after inspection date rather than on the same June 30th date for everything? Because that seems to me setting up a situation where everything comes due at once and kind of makes an impossible workload for you on June 30th. Would it not be easier for them to get their inspections whenever a year is up for them?
With regards to your question, sir, it could alleviate some of that congestion that you're referring to. With regards to GDOE earlier, where they said that they're doing these self-assessments, that helps as well because it keeps the schools in that state of readiness frame of mind, so that they're looking out for those things. So that's also helpful for the schools. The one thing and I'm not an attorney by any stretch, but I was looking at some of the laws relative to sanitary permits, and I didn't see any reference that said you needed to have an inspection to get your sanitary permit renewed. That's just my read.
You haven't seen anything that requires an inspection before the issuance of a sanitary permit?
Not in.
There are a few. There's actually one particular type of health-regulated establishment, which is temporary workforce housing per Chapter 26A of Title 10, which actually has the renewal of the sanitary permit is in phases, and so it is not all deemed to be phased for reinspection at the same time, which is very different from the June 30th date, which is in statute. But it's I think in the past, when I think Department of Revenue and Taxation had all business license expired on June 30, I think it was meant to mirror that same time for renewal. That being said, clearly, Rev and Tax has acknowledged the need to change that, and it has in fact changed. And we also acknowledge that too. And everything, like our health certificate validity, is based on the date of application. So it could be the date of application, it could be the date of issuance, 1 year. There is a term for that period. So it's definitely possible. I don't know if it's perhaps germane to introduce this into the language of this bill, but it's definitely possible.
Okay, and are you sure that the language is clear about not requiring an inspection before issuance of sanitary permits? Because I'm not sure all the details of it, but from what I understand, the Attorney General is indicting people for not inspecting and issuing sanitary permits. Were you able to receive any guidance from the Attorney General on that point?
Actually, I don't believe we have, and as it's not our case and it's in litigation, I have no information to comment on that as well. I think Deputy PJ is on the same, so we actually don't know.
To your question, sir, no, we've not received any guidance yet from the Attorney General.
Yeah, because I would tend to agree with you that I don't think there's anything requiring it, but as I say, the indictments kind of fly in the face of that. I guess really that's my question, is if you've received any further, because that's really my question mark here, is how does the AG fit in all this? And if you ever do receive an answer to your follow-up email, I would please request that you share it to my office. And with that, Madam Speaker, I yield the rest of my time till the next question, the next round of questions.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Barnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the panel for being here. And I think I just want to start with public health. If I may ask, do you believe that Public Law 37-4 prevents the issuing of variances relative to the Guam Department of Education facilities?
It doesn't fully prevent the issuance of variances. Section A, which is struck through from this current bill that we're discussing, actually does prevent variances from being approved that led to the suspension of the sanitary permit or basically failing the inspection. So that means everything from Senator Tello's comment about the permanent marker on the desk. If it was cited, there's no variance we could receive for that. If it was something as big as vector control, an issue with pests or rodents, there's no variance you could submit for that as well. So anything that was cited, whether simple or not, that led to the closure based on how the law reads, is technically we cannot approve any variances. The director cannot approve any variances as we understand it.
So you're saying the Director of Public Health cannot approve any variances as far as you understand?
That's actually inaccurate, sir. In terms of Public Law 37-4, Section A says it shall not be issued to a GDOE public school if failure to comply with Article 7, Chapter 26 of these rules and regulations will result in the suspension of the sanitary permit of a GDOE public school. So the way it's viewed is that we can't issue that variance if it led to a school failing. Any variance, basically the only option a GDOE school would have is corrective action. And so this bill actually striking that phrase out gives public health the opportunity or option to receive them, review them, and at the director's discretion approve them, at which he may require additional substantiation for these variances.
Yes, that's what's a little confusing to me, is because in discussions and in previous hearings, we know that the Guam Department of Education for several months now has been meeting with the Department of Public Health and Social Services relative to this entire issue of the variances. And as you know, Public Law 37-4 requires the Department of Public Health to submit these reports of variances that we have been in receipt of since May. So every month since May, we've been getting a very detailed and lengthy, I might add, list of the variances that have been submitted to the Department of Public Health and Social Services. And going as far as DPHS sending back variance requests and saying, hey, can you change this or that, and send it back. And it's even our understanding that although you're saying that Public Law 37-4 prohibits you from issuing variances, but that variances have actually been granted since the passage of Public Law 37-4. Is that correct, ma'am?
Variances can be granted, but a variance cannot be granted if it led for an item that was cited that led to the suspension of a permit or basically failing. Now, how it's sort of viewed is, yes, GDOE can submit as many variance requests as they'd like, and we have showed in our monthly reporting requirement that they have submit quite a few variances. But that being said, that doesn't necessarily mean they've been approved by the director, which is what is required.
Right. But ma'am, I'm looking at the variance submission reports that we've got, and there was actually a variance granted district-wide for the ceiling tiles, correct?
That is actually the only district-wide variance that has been approved to date that I know of, district-wide. Yeah, it is the ceiling tiles.
Okay, so there has been a variance granted since the passage of Public Law 37-4.
Yes, there's been one.
Thank you. And I wanted to now switch to the Guam Department of Education, and maybe if you could share more of your plans, because there seems to be this idea that on August 23rd, whatever schools we're unable to open are just not going to open ever. And so I know that the goal is that, as you have said on the record here, that we get as many schools open as possible so that we have an assemblage of elementary, middle, and high school so that we can double session. Now, after that happens, any school that is unable to open by August 23rd does the work to open that school and plans to double session with those facilities. Do those efforts continue?
Our effort is to match them all up so they can open, and so that's why the inspections are heavy on elementary schools, but they include middle schools and high schools as well. We're in the process now of actually physically matching up student bodies. If we were to use online, it would be at the secondary level, not the elementary level, which might cause us to have smaller kids in buildings that are designed for bigger kids, but face-to-face instruction outweighs the rest of it.
Let me just get specific, Mr. Superintendent. So let's take, for example, a Phase 3 school like George Washington High School. Are there plans underway, discussions underway to possibly double session that campus with parts of the Guam Community College, and this effort being led by the board chair of education?
Yes, and the short answer is yes. We already have a guarantee of 11 classrooms at the community college, and we're doing this with several of our facilities, trying to identify those portions of the campus that will pass inspection and condemn the other part that won't, and then offset with that. So George Washington, according to my conversation with the principal and Dr. Okada, is that they feel they're going to have enough space to handle their own student body in-house.
And so I think that speaks to the idea of rolling openings, right? And so we're trying to get an assemblage of schools ready for August 23rd, but after that date, work will continue, and schools that aren't able to open by the 23rd will, knock on wood, hopefully be able to open anytime after that point.
Well, the work to open all the facilities will continue regardless.
Thank you for that. I wanted to ask Public Health, and this is kind of something that I know you guys are working collaboratively. That's very encouraging, but relative to, and I'm only going to ask because GDOE has really asked us to ask you guys to allow people onto the school campus relative to registering for school, and I know that you expressed that it's pretty much like a building permit. If you don't have a sanitary permit, you can't come onto the campus, but would you be open to the idea of drive-through registration, something like where they remain in the vehicle and enter the school property?
I know there was at least one instance where they used a community center, I believe, to be able to do that kind of activity, sir. So for me, better to err on the side of caution and minimize traffic going into a school that has not yet been cleared for occupancy or operation. So I think if GDOE is able to find that kind of...
I see. So continue doing the off-site registration, basically. Well, there's your answer. Thank you. Or Peter John or Ms. Francine, if you're able to answer this, are schools able to condemn or otherwise rope off parts of their campus that they're not utilizing and then allow the rest of the school to be inspected without those portions affecting the inspection score?
Yes, they actually are allowed to do that. That being said, there are a few things that are required to do so. We would need adequate notice, a written notice sent to us letting us know this area is cordoned off. They also need to indicate it on their school map, which they provide to our inspectors when they go on site. And then the area has to have proper cordoning off, whether it's tape, rope, whatever, to restrict access. It is allowable. It's just, there needs to be something posted to identify that this area is restricted from access. And at that point, that is really all our inspectors are looking for as they pass that area.
Has GDOE been pretty good about those types of plans? Because I know there's several campuses where they're instituting that.
Yes. I think we inspected, I believe Antolon had a few areas cordoned off. I'm almost, if I'm not mistaken, in their requests and on their map. So it's the inspection is kind of this moving part, and so it's something that we're trying to help and collaboratively work towards helping them pass, but at the same time making sure the schools are safe. And so we walk that tightrope every day in helping GDOE. So to help them understand, we have questions. That's why we meet with them every week. They ask and we say, well, we need this noted this way, otherwise it's as your floor plan or your map said. You didn't condemn it off in the floor plan, so my inspectors are going to go off. There was no written notice to let us know, so we're going to just proceed as we should. So it's just how we're supposed to work to make sure that everybody's on the same page, there was adequate notice given, and my inspectors are aware.
Thank you, Francine. I do have some questions that I'll save for another round, but I did want to close on my time here. There's been some discussion with some of my colleagues who have spoken previously, and even with yourself, a discussion about a repeal of Public Law 37-4. And so, Mr. Peter John, as the Director of Public Health, are you advocating to return to conditions where our students go to school in facilities that are not inspected and do not have a sanitary permit?
My understanding, Senator, is that if 37-4 is repealed and we revert back to the previous statute that allowed the schools to come into compliance by 2024, school year 2024-25, it gives GDOE more time to be able to address, things that are have been identified and may be identified in the future. I would ask that, again, the issue of, for your consideration, the issue of the renewal of sanitary permits, as I said, with the exception that Ms. Francine had mentioned. Like I said, I'm not an attorney, but there was nothing that seemed to say you had to have this to be able to get a sanitary permit renewed. So, and I'm only the deputy director. I'm not the director, sir.
Well, thank you. And I would just caution that I think that we're on the same page, and I'm very encouraged by the Guam Department of Education's efforts to move towards compliance. And I think that you're absolutely right. We haven't seen this type of energy, this type of urgency. We've also never seen this circumstance where public schools are getting inspected prior to the issuance of the sanitary permit. And so I would just say that is absolutely ridiculous and offensive to the students of the Guam Department of Education, that we would, while we're moving forward expeditiously, somehow introduce the idea that it's okay to move backwards. And I don't think that's a standard that we're willing to return to. And I just wanted to note that on the record, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. We're up against our meeting with the Missile Defense Agency, so we're going to recess until 11 a.m. Recess till 11 a.m.